Hello and welcome to Module 11, where I will guide you through an exciting phase of your design journey as we dive into the powerful world of SketchUp layout. In the previous models, we have honed our skills in creating stunning 3D models using SketchUp. Now it's time to take those designs to the next level as we explore SketchUp Layout, a tool that transforms your 3D creations into professional scaled 2D spatial plans and elevation drawings. So if you're ready to turn your SketchUp designs into compelling visual narratives, join me in Module 11. As we navigate this module, envision your ideas taking form, evolving into a professional interior design documentation ready to impress clients and facilitate seamless communication with cabinet makers and builders. So without further ado, let's get started. In this video, I will show you on how to set up layout. If you're using a SketchUp Pro license, layout should be already installed on your computer. Navigate to your application folder, and inside your SketchUp folder, you will find the layout icon. Once started, you will be greeted with a welcome screen. In some cases, it might ask you to log into your SketchUp subscription plan, but you have already done that before, so you know the process. In the same way as SketchUp, Layout has its own templates. Under More Templates, you can see them all. You can navigate to Title Block, for instance. There are plenty to choose from, depending on if you prefer your title block to be on the bottom or on the side. Usually, you will create the design documentations in A3 or A1, depending on how big you need it. Decide wisely, as later, if you wish to change the size, it's a bit more tricky. Since I would like to show you everything from scratch, I will just open a plain paper page in A3. A new window has been opened. I would recommend to create a folder on your desktop where you can place all the documents you will need for this documentation to keep them all in one place. So it will be the layout file itself, the 3D SketchUp file you have created, either single or if you have created multiple files for each room, all the separate files. And maybe the spatial plan. We have created the module 2, as I like to keep them separate from each other, the 2D and the 3D file. Anyway, I'm placing them in a separate folder and call it SKP Documents, for instance. Now back to layout. The first thing you will try to do is, most likely, use your Orbit key. That won't work, as the navigation in layout is a little different. It feels different. So simply press H for hand. This will be much easier to navigate within the page. And Space key to select objects. So basically you use Space and H to navigate, and the mouse to scroll in and out. On the side, you will see that your tabs has been opened. If not, you can turn them on under Window. On the top of your main window, you will find multiple tools, some of which look similar to the ones you find in SketchUp, but we will go through them in the next video. Let us have a look first at some settings. Open Layout Settings. Applications lets you choose a program you want to be used to adjust certain files. You can leave that open. Backup settings. I keep it as is too. Under Folders, you will find where templates, scrapbooks, and pattern fill images are stored. Nothing to adjust here. Under General, only the mouse scroll speed might be interesting. If you feel your mouse moves too fast, you could decrease the speed here. Under Presentation, I also don't make any changes. Under the Scales, you will find multiple standard scales. If you need a very specific scale for your project, you could include it in here. Sometimes I like a scale that is in between two of the current standard scales to make it fit better on my page. So yeah, if you feel you need another scale, just add it here. Under the shortcuts, you can assign and view the current shortcuts. Under Startup, you can define whether it should start with a welcome screen, open a blank document, or choose a very specific template. We will talk about this later. For now, we can close the window. Let us navigate to File, Document Setup. What is interesting here is maybe the grid, if you would like to display one. It can help later with placements of objects, but that is totally up to you. Personally, for me, it distracts me, so I don't like to use it. Under Paper, you can adjust the size of your document. Add a margin if you wish. I keep it as A3 without a margin. Well, in the rendering settings, I would like you to edit the resolution for viewports and images and choose High. This way, your images will be displayed in good resolution. If you feel that your computer can't handle it that well, you can always adjust it to a lower resolution. Under Units, please choose your preferred format. Lastly, I would like to show you how you can adjust your toolbar. Navigate to View, Customize Toolbar. With time, you may want to include more tools up here. I like to add the Hand tool, the Undo Redo tool, the Bring to Front, Bring Forward, Send to Back, and Send Backwards tool, the Zoom Extends, both flipping tools, color, and fronts. And at the bottom, I choose Icon and Text. The instructor on the right side helps you understand tools as well once selected. Okay, now that we have set up layout, we will have a look specifically at the tools and the tabs in the next video. Let me quickly start by showing you a couple of the tools Layout has to offer. First of all, the Line tool. Just like in SketchUp, you can create a straight or a freehand line on your paper. With the Space key, you can then select it, move it around. You can also scale it up. If you want it to be scaled uniformly, press the Shift key. I will move it on top of my other shape, and you will notice that it has been filled with a white surface. Open the Shape options to view the settings you can make within this object. Right now, it has a fill. You can turn that off or even change the color. You can fill it with a pattern using the Pattern Fill tab to choose from the standard options available. The stroke basically is the line itself. We can make it super thin, while 0.5 works best, as printers only can print a certain thickness. Just know that you can change the stroke thickness in here. I could even decide if my line will be dashed in here. If I have a straight line, I can create a start and an end arrow, and define the size of the arrow with this number. Once you click away, you will notice that the settings will also go back to standard. So if you wish to keep the same settings for certain tools, you have to adjust the settings before creating a new line or a freehand line. This way it will always be remembered. The arc tools work the same as in SketchUp. The 2-point arc creates an arc between two dots. The pie creates an arc with a fill. Just like SketchUp layout has snapping points, which make your life easier. Then we also have further shapes like rectangles, circles, and polygons. The offset tool lets you offset an object in the same way as in SketchUp. If you would like to use the text tool, I recommend to open the fonts settings as well. Before I create a text box, I set my font to keep it as a standard. For example, using Arial standard size 12. There is a difference in simply just clicking once with the text tool. It will create automatically the size of your text field based on how much text you have written. Or you start by creating a text box and then start typing inside. With space, you get out of the text box, and within one click, you can move the text box. With a double click, you can go inside the text box and adjust your text itself. The label tool lets you create labels. Here you can set your standard font as well, and also use the shape style to choose the arrows you wish. Please note that whenever you create a label, it will snap to the point you have selected. That means once you start moving your object, your label tool will also move. We will skip the measurements for now, as we will create them later. The table tool lets you create a table. You can choose the columns and the rows, and if you click another time, you can choose the width. With a double click, you are able to adjust the text inside the table. With the select tool, you can also scale the table bigger, while it keeps the text size. With the erase tool, you erase objects or lines. The style tool lets you copy certain style settings, such as the font and the size, while you can easily apply it to another text box. The split tool lets you cut a line into half and remove the part you don't want. I have never used it before. The join brings them back together. This is also a tool I find a little redundant. The pen tool we already know, as well as the undo and redo. Just like any other layout tools, you can define which object should overlap or be behind an object. Here you can choose the order. It works like layers or tags, but within one page. Zoom Extends brings you back to a wider preview in case you zoomed in too close. Well, and the flipping tool is quite obvious, lets you flip text or objects. Let's move on to the tabs. We talked about shape style, pattern style, and then structure. Let's open pages. Right now, we only have one page. We could duplicate it, add a new page, and of course, delete a page. You can choose if you would like to see thumbnails or a list. If you open layers, you will see a default page and on every page layer. If we select on every page layer, we can place objects in here, which should appear on every single page. For instance, let me create 2 rectangles. Since I have placed them on the every page layer, they will now appear on every page. I usually don't create more layers, as I'm totally fine with working with those 2. If something has to be on every page, I adjust the objects in here, and otherwise I use the default on every page. Also, once you are done with the objects for every page, I recommend to lock this layer so you don't start adding objects or texts by accident. Lastly, the scrapbook lets you include symbols such as people or cars or trees, or even elevation symbols, which we will be using in the later videos. We will talk about dimension styles in future videos, as well as the SketchUp Model tab when we start working with viewports. Over the next videos, I will show you how to work with text, lines, and labels before we start creating detailed drawings. For now, you can open a blank A3 page and start trying out the tools and tabs we have seen in this video. Before we dive into the specifics of working with lines, text, labels, images, and viewports, I'd like to provide you with 2 templates that will be featured in the upcoming videos. Feel free to use these templates for your projects and modify them according to your needs. Upon downloading the Module 11 zip file, you will find a folder containing layout templates. Open the millimeter or inches templates based on your requirements. In the following videos, you will witness an example of this document template filled with images and text. In future sessions, we will utilize the drawing template to craft detailed spatial plans and elevations. These files can be retained for future projects, serving as a foundation to build upon. Once you comprehend how layout works, you can customize them to align with your specific needs and save them as your own personal template by selecting File, Save as Template. When you initiate a new project, it will appear in your template section. Basically, any layout file you have created can be designated as a template. I recommend adding your logo and editing your website details before saving it as your personal template. Alright, let's kick it off in the next videos. Before we dive into creating floor plans and elevations in SketchUp, I would like you to grasp the basics of working with text, images, and clipping masks over the next videos. To guide you, I have put together some pages showcasing a design documentation approach. I typically create my design documentations in another layout program, like Canva, because it's a bit more user-friendly with layers and image placements. However, when it comes to scale drawings and elevations, I rely on SketchUp Layout. We will create detailed drawings by the end of this module. So it's up to you if you actually want to create your whole documentation using SketchUp Layout, or later create a combination of both using SketchUp Layout and maybe Canva. Let's start by focusing on working with text. Now, when dealing with tabs on a Mac, they can get messy. You can simply click on Window Arrange Panels and it will tidy up your windows. So we have opened a blank A3 page. Make sure to check your document settings, as mentioned in the previous video, to ensure you have the right unit, and perhaps increase the image preview to high quality. Navigating is easy, using the hand tool and the space button. You just have to get used to it, especially if you start working in SketchUp first and then switch to layout. Under Pages, you can see that I have created 8 pages for this example. It's up to you if you want to work with additional layers. Generally, I don't work with them that much. Usually I keep 2 or maybe 3 layers. For instance, you can decide that some objects can be placed on the every page layer that is automatically generated by SketchUp Layout. And the rest you can place on a default or any new layer. You can distinguish if an object is on the every page layer by seeing the object with a red border. So first of all, make sure you are on the correct layer. If by accident you have created an object or text on the wrong layer, you can right-click and move it to the correct layer. I'm going to lock my On Every Page layer, so I only open it when I wish to create an object that will be placed on every page. This could be a logo or something similar as in this example. As I mentioned in the previous videos, you can create a simple text box with a defined size, or you click once to start writing and let Layout create the text box based on how much text you have written. Under Fonts, you can adjust the type, size, and the color of the text. For some reason, you can see a red arrow on the side. It just means that your text needs more space within its box, so just expand it. A useful tip is to arrange the text horizontally or vertically on the page if you wish to have it centered. Also, work with the alignments within the font settings. Sometimes you want your text to be aligned left, and another time on the right or in the center. If you're working a lot with Canva, you may want to start scaling your text in here, but that won't work, as you define the total area in which your text can be placed within this box. So if you wish for a bigger size text, use the font size settings. In the same way as in SketchUp, you can group multiple objects or text together and ungroup them. If you have a group, you basically also toggle within the group to reach the object you wish to adjust. You can also create copies of a text using your Option key on a Mac or Control key on a Windows. Now, using lines in your documentation can be helpful as well. You can define the endpoints and its size, or the general thickness of the line. Sometimes you may wish to create a line with a bow, like this, using the 2-point arc tool. Defining the endpoints, and if you wish, you can even create dotted lines. Another useful tip is to create rectangles or rounded shapes and define whether they will be filled with a certain color or only create a border around. Next are labels. Labels are a combination of text and lines, so you don't have to create them separately. Make sure to set your settings first before starting a label, especially if you want to create multiple labels, as otherwise you need to adjust them one by one. So set your settings. If you are happy with them, you can start creating labels. By only using clicks, you get straight labels like these. If you wish an arc, simply click once, and before clicking the second time, move your mouse up or down to set the bow. Then type your text and click on the Select tool to fix the label. Please be informed that once you start moving your object, your label will move too. It's better to create labels at the very last step on your page after you have already placed the images. Speaking of images, let's have a look at how to work with them in the next video. Let's talk about how to use images and logos in SketchUp layout and how to create a clipping mask. First up, logos. For those running an interior design business, having your unique logo is a must, whether it's a JPEG or PNG file with or without a transparent background. SketchUp layout handles them differently. I have organized my project folder with additional folders for better file management. Importing a logo with a white background or a PNG file without one is straightforward. Just drag it into the file or use File Insert. Remember to use the Shift key when scaling to avoid distorting your logo or image. Now importing a PNG file with a transparent background. Unlike Canva, SketchUp doesn't offer a one-click background removal, so prep your files beforehand. JPEG files are always flat, lacking transparency, but PNG files can be prepared to have a transparent background. You can use online services such as remove.bg or Canva to remove backgrounds and export the file as a PNG with transparency. Every image or file imported into layout is linked to its origin. Under File Document Settings, in the References folder, you can see all imported images. Keep an eye on red indications. If an image has been moved or deleted from its original folder, it needs relinking. Also, if you have imported a logo or image but later decide to not use it, it's still saved locally, so you can purge unused images to improve your performance. Ensure references are up to date. Moving an image requires relinking. Keep that in mind, please. You will notice I have used many images, but how did I manage to create creative shapes around these images? Those have been created with the usage of clipping masks. For a clipping mask, layout requires you to create a shape first. The easiest way is to create the shape of your choice, such as a circle or a rounded shape. Then fill the shape with a transparent gray without a border. Then you import the image you want to place inside this shape. Place the image behind the shape. Scale it, and since the top shape has a transparent fill, you can easily see through it to be able to place your image better. Once you're happy with its location, select both, click Right, and create a clipping mask. Imagine it as a group, only that the shape defines the outer frame. We can always double-click inside, start moving our image again, and once we click outside the clipping mask of the shape, it will be applied again. You could also remove the image and then place another image in the same way again. Let's have a look at the examples from this documentation. See, all those are shapes and define a clipping mask. Even the color samples, I have used Dulux images. If for the color samples you don't wish to use images, you can use the pixel sample pipette to choose a color, or just type in the color code within the RGB sliders. Let me move to the shopping list. In order for those products to be placed behind or on top of each other, those are all PNG files with a transparent background. Usually, when you use the images from a store, you mostly get a JPEG, so they have automatically a white or certain background. So if you wish to create a collection like this, you need to prepare your files and create PNG files with a transparent background. As I mentioned before, you can use Canva or a simpler service such as remove.bg and download them as a PNG file. Then we can move those PNG files into layout and start moving them on top of each other to create this kind of collection. You can certainly save yourself the time and simply place them next to each other using the original white background. In general, not all interior designers create a shopping list board like this. Some may use management programs such as Mydoma to generate shopping lists with products and links. Since everyone has their own preferences, you have to decide what makes sense to you and your design business. I simply wanted to show you what you can do with layout. By the way, if you're working with Canva a lot, you know that you can add a link behind an image. And when exporting the PDF, you basically create a clickable shopping list. Please note that, unfortunately, in layout, you can't place links behind an image, but you can use the PDF editor afterwards if you need to include links on certain products. Lastly, let me quickly show you on how I created this material board with the use of shadows. If you're familiar with Canva, you will know that you can attach a shadow behind an object. If you wish to do the same in layout, it's not as simple, but there's a little trick. Let me ungroup this sample to show you how you can do it. You will notice that I have the general clipping mask for my material. And then there's a PNG shadow file I have created previous in Canva, and I simply placed it behind my sample. I can then just change the scale. Here it doesn't matter if it starts distorting, you won't notice it. Then I just move it to its location and group both objects, and we are good to go. It's a bit more work, but it's possible. When it comes to textile samples, I have designed a clipping shape that mimics the typical appearance of these samples. You have the option to draw it freehand or utilize the line and arc tools. Once you have outlined the shape, use the join tool to connect all lines and create the desired form. As a convenience, I will be providing you with this template, allowing you to easily copy this shape from this file to your own project. Now you are equipped to handle images and layout, understand transparency importance, create clipping masks, and even incorporate shadows. The next video, we will tackle viewports and leveraging scenes from your SketchUp files. In this lesson, we will talk about viewports in SketchUp layout. Viewports are windows or frames that display different scenes or perspectives from your SketchUp model. They allow you to organize and present various views of your 3D model on a single page, in your document. So how do you create a viewport? Let's say we want to create a scaled drawing from our 2D spatial plan we have created in Module 2 using a SketchUp file. You will notice I have created this page. Don't worry, I will share this template with you. So once we are in Layout, we simply drag and drop the SketchUp file inside, or we use File, Insert. Now what we see here is called a viewport. It's essentially a SketchUp file within Layout. If we double-click and click Right, we can choose some options here. For instance, we can start orbiting within this file. Now the problem is that it previews the last saved view. Certainly, we can start to choose a top view and change the style in here, but it can happen that the next time you save the file, it goes back to the last saved preview. So we better make sure we have a saved scene in our SketchUp file that we can then choose in here. Let me open the spatial plan in SketchUp. You can do so by clicking Right and select Open in SketchUp, or select the file from your folders. If you wish, you can create a scene of this, calling it Working Mode. Then we choose the top view, maybe zoom in a little bit, and adjust the style using my 2D black and white from my master's collection. Then we create another scene. This time I will call it Top View. If you haven't watched the previous modules and don't know how to create a scene, I would recommend to visit Module 10. What's left to do is to save my file. Moving back to Layout, it may happen that it was already updated. If not, click Right and choose Update Model Reference. Now we can finally talk about this tab called SketchUp Model. You can see multiple settings. Just relapse those and see what you can choose. First of all, we select a scene, and like magic, our scenes appear in here now. Now another important setting is to choose not raster, but hybrid. This will make your drawing clear. Another very important setting is the line scale. Maybe some of you have used Layout before and were a little upset that the lines appear very thick, even after setting hybrid. Now it's because your line scale settings might be too thick. Just decrease the line thickness and you will be impressed by how detailed and clean your drawings will be. I would recommend to try out what works best for your printer. If 0.3 is too thin, choose a thicker line scale, and so on. In the camera settings, we could use a standard view such as top view, but in this case, we have already saved our view within our scene, so no need to adjust anything here. You will notice that currently the file is not scaled, meaning you can just use the window frame and scale it smaller or bigger. If we select Ortho and choose a very specific scale, let's say 1 to 100 millimeters, now it will be fixed, and once we start scaling it, it only moves the outside frame. This way we can just adjust the outside frame to make the general file appear a little smaller here. By the way, you can also choose the scale by clicking Right. And as I mentioned in the How to Set Up Layout video, you can include more scales under Layout, Preferences, Scales. Under the style settings, we already applied a specific style setting within the SketchUp scene, so also no need to choose another. Once you open the tags, you will be impressed that even here you can turn on and off different layers or tags from your SketchUp file. Since we can define that also within a scene, I don't really need to turn off and off any additional layer, but just know it's possible. And now look at this beauty of possibilities. We have an A3 page with a scaled 1:100 millimeters spatial plan drawing. The beauty of layout and viewports is that now if for some reason I need to make changes to my original spatial plan in SketchUp, let's say I move the entryway armchair a little bit and save the file again. Once I'm back in layout, it will be automatically updated. And that is the beauty of viewports. We can utilize different scenes we have created in SketchUp and move them into layout to create scaled drawings from those. I will show you how to create measurements in the upcoming video. For now, let me create a key area similar to this, but maybe not as detailed with all the window measurements. To define the area of the outside frame, I will start first by copying this scaled drawing to the side, start adjusting my window frame, or just use a clipping shape to create a clipping mask to create those windows. I will speed that up for you. And here we have our scaled spatial plan with a key. It's up to you what you wish to display within the key. In the upcoming video, I will guide you how to create detailed measurements, how to export the whole drawing. Before we start creating our dimensions, I would like to show you a couple more tricks for your pages. Let me only view what is currently on the every page layer and unlock it. I recommend to add the most important information in this template so it will be applied to all further pages. For instance, import and scale your company logo. Edit your website information. And adjust the Drawn By section. Give the project a name and add the client information as well. Now let's talk about some automated options here. For instance, the date. How do I add an automated date or an automated page name? There's some automated options under Text, Customize Auto Text. For instance, current date. You can copy this text, close this window, and once you create a new text box, paste it in this specific text box. Once you click outside, it will automate and you don't need to edit the date each time you revisit your layout file. The same goes for the page name. The page name relates to the page name you have created. Just try it out and make use of auto text to save yourself some time. Okay, now that we have added the most important information, let me turn my default layer back on and lock my on every page layer. I left the drawing on the default layer as this is something that changes with the pages. And here and in the little drawing information box, I will adjust it too. I would like to actually start with a floor plan, not with my spatial plan. So let me turn off my spatial plan tag in this viewport. And now let's get started with our measurements. If you wish to have your measurements on a separate layer, you can do so. Simply create a new tag and call it measurements. I recommend to do that as sometimes it helps to turn this specific layer off if I need to make adjustments to my viewport, as otherwise it might be difficult to select your viewport if your measurements sit on top of it. Okay, to create measurements, open the shape style, dimension style, and the fonts. You can select the linear tool from the top. First, we define a line scale. I will try with 0.3. And I like my measurements to be in color to distinguish them better from the rest. For the start and finish arrow, I can choose my preferred symbol. Let me start with the first measurement and see how it looks. Once I click on the measurement, I can further define if I want my measurement to be on the top, the middle, or below the line. I can define the alignment and also if I wish to display millimeters or just the measure by itself. In general, choose your unit here as well. In the bottom, you can define whether you wish a gap between the start point or not. Okay, now let me remove this measurement again and see if I need to make changes to the standard setting. As I mentioned before, your settings will be lost if you apply any changes to one specific measurement only. So make sure to have your settings ready and then start creating all your measurements. Now, if you have never created a floor plan before, there's a guideline when it comes to where to place your measurements. It's not mandatory to follow this guide always, but some recommend it. Sometimes you may have many viewports within one page and can't always allow the full space of those guidelines suggested, so make it depending on how much space you have on your page. Those guidelines I'm providing are for an A3 page. The first measurements are the overall exterior dimensions, and it's recommended to place it 35 millimeters or 1.38 inches from the outside wall. The second row could be the room dimensions and the outside wall thickness. Make sure to snap the correct points, as they are important in case you make changes in your SketchUp file, as they will be adjusted automatically in here. This row is usually offset by 25 millimeters or about 1 inch from the outside wall. Again, it depends on how much space you have, and of course, you can adjust the placement of some measurements a little bit for better visibility. And lastly, we have another row for the windows, doors, and some specific walls that we need measurements to understand how much space we have if we want to place a wardrobe or something else. This row sits about 15 millimeters or 0.6 inches from the outside wall. If for some reason you need to make style changes to all measurements, such as adjusting the text size. Simply turn off the other layers in order to be able to only select the measurements. This way, you can adjust them all at the same time. What else did I want to share with you? Yes. When you open the PDF containing the drawings from Module 1, you will observe additional viewports I have incorporated. These showcase detailed measurements from a top view perspective, highlighting custom cabinetry, bathrooms, the laundry room, and the kitchen. Essentially, these viewports are interconnected. They all use the same SketchUp file. I can effortlessly duplicate the same viewport, adjust the scale, perhaps 1:32, to present it more prominently on my page, and finally apply a clipping mask with a thin border over the drawing. By fine-tuning my line scale, I can determine the level of detail needed for this drawing, and the use of thinly scaled lines helps in precisely snapping the measurements as well. Now, the rationale behind creating such detailed 2D spatial plans becomes evident. I'm leveraging this SketchUp file in multiple viewports to generate those intricate and detailed drawings. Just imagine the following. If I need to create detailed measurements for my carpenter from a top view perspective, I can't possibly have shown them all on the same page, as my floor plan or my spatial plan have measurements themselves. Therefore, logically, I need to create further views and bigger views of a specific room or a custom cabinetry and showcase them individually. Another important consideration: we need to make so many drawings from a top view perspective. Really consider to have a separate file. One for the 2D floor or spatial plan to create those specific top views, and another is the 3D file to create elevations. Layout can become slow the more big viewports you incorporate and the more details it needs to load. So keep that in mind. Lastly, those dark symbols you see here serve to identify on the spatial plan the page where you can find this specific drawing. The symbol is from my master elevation scrapbook, and in the next video I will demonstrate how to import a scrapbook. We will also commence the process of creating elevations from our 3D file. In this class, we will apply our previous knowledge to create those detailed scaled elevation drawings. In Module 10, we have learned how to create scenes and apply certain styles to our scenes as well. I have shown you how you can create unscaled elevation JPEG files. But for layout, we don't just want to import JPEG files, we need scaled elevation drawings from our 3D model that will also update automatically if we make any changes to the design. Now, the same way as we have used scenes for our top view drawings, we can leverage scenes from an elevation perspective to create those drawings in layout, add dimensions, or labels. I made sure to include many elevations in the SketchUp file to show you how to organize elevations for your real projects. If you have to work with single files, that's fine, you will only have a few scenes per file. But if you work with one single file for the whole house, you need to make sure to keep an eye on the created scenes, and not only that, the big amount of section planes you will have in your file. A tip is to place the elevation planes on a separate layer, so in case you need to adjust them, you can find them easier by turning off and on certain tags. You could do that per room or multiple rooms. I have created a couple of tags for my section planes, as you can see. You need to define how many elevation drawings you will need and create a numbered plan like we did in here. I mean, you don't have to create this overview, but it certainly helps to understand which walls or custom furniture pieces will get an elevation drawing. I have in total 19 elevations, as you can see in my SketchUp file. To distinguish them, I have named my scenes and the section plane itself with the same name. Let's have a closer look. Our first elevation, E1, is for our entryway custom wardrobe. I have made sure to turn off all unnecessary layers in my scene. This step is important, as otherwise you will slow down layout unnecessarily. Turn only the tags on you really need. If you have skipped previous modules and don't know how to create those scenes in your SketchUp file, I recommend to visit Module 10. So I wrote down my order of elevations I need and kept creating scenes in SketchUp in the same order as I will do so on my plan. If you're starting to create those scenes, make sure you're well rested, as it may take some focus. Once you're done with your scenes, save your file one last time. Keep it open. Most likely you have forgotten to turn on or off a tag, or might need to update the scenes once in a while, and therefore might need to switch between layout and SketchUp. So I have layout already open. I used my drawing template and placed my 2D spatial plan for Module 2 in here to create this overview plan of elevations. To add those symbols, you can open your Scrapbook tab and use some that are provided from SketchUp, or you can import my master scrapbook, which was included in the Module 11 zip file. Simply open the file in Layout. You will notice it's essentially just a layout file with multiple pages. Basically, you could add onto this file with more symbols you may need and then save it as a scrapbook. It will now appear in your drop-down menu, and with the Edit option, you can open the file and, as I mentioned, could add more pages or more symbols, and it will be saved under this location. Now it's easy. Go to the elevation page, click on the symbol and drag and drop it inside your page. You can adjust the elevation number and the page later on. Then you can add the elevation line and change the size. Let us have a look at some elevation drawings I already prepared. This upper symbol and text you will also find in the master scrapbook. So basically, I just dropped my SketchUp file in here, chose my scene and my scale. Depending on how big you need to place the elevation, you may want to choose a scale of about 1:32 for an A3 page, or 1:16 if you want only one elevation per page. For kitchens and laundry rooms, you may need to place it bigger, 1:16, like in this laundry room example, as you need to add more dimensions. For other elevations, the 1:32 should be sufficient. If I do recheck this elevation size using a line, it's about 140 millimeters or 5.5 inches in real size, based on an A3 total size. So you decide if that is big enough for you. If not, you can place just 2 or 1 elevation per page. On some pages, you will notice this round detail I have created. While I could certainly just use a screenshot or image from this area, I did want to create scaled measurements, and that is only possible with a viewport. So I simply copied this viewport, adjusted the scale. You may need one that is 1 to 1 or 1 to 5 or maybe 1 to 10 in order to view it bigger. Then I added a round shape to create a clipping mask with a thin border. Once you start dimensions, SketchUp will be able to snap onto those little points, as it's a viewport. Another important aspect to consider is selecting the render mode as hybrid, but exercise caution as this might take some time to render depending on your computer's performance. Afterwards, define your line scale to ensure the creation of clean and crisp drawings. My preferred workflow involves creating the initial viewport, configuring the necessary settings, and then duplicating this viewport. Choose my next scene and just adjust my window frame accordingly. Once you have completed your elevations, the next step is to export them as a PDF. Simply navigate to File and choose Export. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed this module and feel inspired to create beautiful scaled drawings. As I mentioned before, I usually create my design documentations using Canva, but I really do depend on SketchUp layout to create those detailed scaled drawings. Find a combination that works best for you. And now enjoy a quick time lapse to see how I created the elevation drawings from our Eden Springs kitchen. I wanted to update you on my ongoing work in Module 12, where I will dive into the world of lighting design within SketchUp and layout. The upcoming module will cover specific aspects such as light types and placements, lumen calculations, and more detailed explanations on crafting a comprehensive lighting plan like this one. If you have reached this video before Module 12's release, I still wanted to offer a quick tutorial on creating a lighting plan. I will showcase how to use my master scrapbook symbols and lighting and electrical plan template for this purpose. Important note: I am not an electrician, and the plan I demonstrate is not a substitute for an official electrical plan produced by a licensed electrician. This plan serves the purpose of guiding clients who may feel overwhelmed when deciding on lighting types, fixtures, or electrical socket placements in a new build. Upon downloading the Module 11 zip file, you can find and open the lighting plan template. Adjust your logo and all the other necessary information like your website and save it as your template if desired. Ensure you have followed previous videos on opening and saving the master scrapbook. You should be able to choose it from the drop-down menu, along with the lighting and electrical symbols section. Feel free to add symbols to the master scrapbook using the Edit function. You can simply add another row if necessary and create symbols using Layout's drawing tools. Remember to close the master template file that we have just opened to avoid accidental overrides. When opening a new file with the template, you can then adjust the specific project detail, such as the name of the project. In this newly opened template, I will import a 2D spatial plan from Module 2, scale it using a 1:75 or 1:100 scale, place it to a good location on my page, and by clicking right, I can lock this viewport so it won't move around. To enhance my symbols, I will create a transparent rectangle over my plan with a white and transparent fill. I can lock this layer as well. Now, my master template already comes with lighting and electrical symbols. If you're using another template that you have created yourself, you can use my master scrapbook and navigate to the lighting symbol page or the electrical page. Here you can find the key symbols that you can easily drag and drop into your page. Next, I ungroup the lighting legend key that is already placed on my page to access the symbols easier. Starting with light fixtures for the entryway, I place symbols such as the table lamp, a wall scone, and a track light. If you prefer a more accurate placement for your light fixtures, you can open your 2D spatial plan at the same time, create the guides, and save the file within the guides. Once you move back to layout, it will update your file and you'll be able to see the guides in layout to place your symbols correctly. Please don't start measuring in layout, as this is a scaled plan and it will take you a long time to calculate. So just use the guides in the file as they will be automatically saved, and later you can just delete the guides. After you have defined all light fixtures in your room, decide from which spots you wish to turn them on and off. Again, this is not an electrical plan. I only showcase from which locations it will be best to use the light fixtures. If you haven't done any projects on site yet, you might not be familiar with the terminology of certain switches. Just know that the three-way switch is to turn off the light fixtures from 2 locations. The four-way switch is to turn the light fixtures on and off from 3 or more locations. So if I was to turn this track light on from, let's say, the entrance, from the console area, and maybe from the end of the hallway, I can use the four-way switches and place them accordingly. Now, to indicate which light fixtures will be used with which switch, simply use an arc with a dashed line between the switch and the light fixture. Now it should be clear to the electrician, and therefore he can create an electrical plan based on that. For my wall fixture, I'm choosing a simple switch from one location. The table lamp doesn't need a switch, it needs a GPO outlet. So have a look at the next page I created, placing all my GPO outlets and other symbols you might find useful as well. Generally, GPOs can be placed in different heights. Some are close to the floor, some may be over the benchtop. These details you can include within the elevation view. You could use a 3D socket from the SketchUp warehouse and place it on the correct spot in your file. And once updated, it will be visible in your elevation view, where you can, of course, include the measurements. Be informed that certain rooms need certain GPOs and building codes apply. Make sure to investigate within your country building code how far away your electrical socket needs to be from a water source. For washing machines and dryers, your country may require a GFCI socket. If you are having doubts about the feasibility of your lighting and general power outlet plan, I strongly advise presenting your finalized plan to an architect, builder, or electrician. They can provide valuable insight into whether the proposed placements are viable or need adjustments. Alright everyone, I will expedite the completion of the next module to provide more in-depth insights into lighting design. In the meantime, I trust this brief video will assist you in creating your lighting plan, and you can take advantage of the provided template and symbols.